Hello, Flanny friends. Today I'm going to be talking about the new Antman movie, Quantumania. So if you haven't seen it yet, beware because there will be spoilers ahead. Now, going into this, I'll admit I'm suffering from a bit of Marvel fatigue. Well, in the beginning, I watched every Marvel movie religiously to see what was going on. Lately, I've just been overwhelmed with just how much content there actually is and how much they keep producing. To their credit, though, they are getting more and more like the comics, because I'm absolutely lost with the timeline and story this one has going on. Still, despite just recently seeing the last Black Panther movie, and still not having watched the last Thor movie, I'm getting to it eventually. The new Ant-Man movie is supposed to set up the new Phase 5 of the MCU, so I figured I'd better check it out and see what's going on. I've seen a lot of reviews saying that Quantumania isn't a good movie, and I really wanted to come into this being one of the voices that cheered it on and say, no, it actually is good. But I was the only person in my showing at my time slot, and there's probably a reason for it. So we'll get into it. To start off, this movie is not actually bad per se. The visuals are pretty decent, and there were one or two moments that I enjoyed. But otherwise, I was just mostly bored, and I can't say that I really felt anything one way or another in regards to this movie. Which really isn't what you want for your flagship movie going into this new phase of the MCU. You want to leave an impact, and there was none. One of the delights for me in the previous movies were all the neat shrinking and enlarging of common day objects using them in inventive ways, and that really isn't present here. I'm all for seeing smaller heroes, pun fully intended, get a bigger and more thematic movie. I just feel like a lot of the charm of the previous ones was lost to make this bigger movie. In the beginning, we have Scott walking through life having a blast. He's famous, he's enjoying life, he's got a best selling book out, and he just is enjoying every moment of it. I was really afraid with the montage and how they were doing things, we're going to get a Spider Man 3 scenario where everything's going well for him and he just becomes oblivious to the pains and suffering of those around him as he focuses on his own good wealth. Thankfully, that's not what we got. Instead, we get him just wanting to spend time with his family, especially Cassie, as he's lost so much time with her. So we start off with him finding Cassie has been arrested. We go and see her getting released thanks to him and Hope, and we see that she had been at a protest and shrunk a police car. So then we go on to a family dinner where everyone is alarmingly okay with Cassie's criminal activity, with the exception of Scott. Also, we get a hint that Cassie has her own shrinking suit, which Scott didn't know about either. So it seems like there's a lot Scott's been left out of the loop of. Including the fact that his daughter is apparently a super genius, because one thing we quickly learn is she has made a telescope of sorts. I can't remember exactly how they describe it in the movie, but it allows them to send a pulse into the quantum realm and kind of get a visual of it. She says that if she had this when he had originally disappeared, she might have been able to find him quicker and get him back home. Well, as soon as Janet hears that, which for those of you who may not remember, Janet is Wasp's mother and was trapped in the quantum realm for 30 years. As soon as she hears there's a pulse being set there, she demands they turn it off. Unfortunately, before they can do much, the pulse does in fact trigger something as all of them are suddenly sucked into the quantum realm. So one of my issues with this movie, and so many other movies, is lying for plot convenience, or just withholding information to quote-unquote protect someone, mainly because it never actually does any good in the end. And normally telling them earlier on would have saved a lot of time and issues and heartache and trouble. Just, honesty is usually the best policy, guys. It really is. I also hate this because it usually only serves to make smart characters look dumb, or good characters look bad. And that's the case with Janet. Hope has been asking her for quite a while about the quantum realm, and she didn't want to talk about it. They assume it's PTSD, which is honestly fair. I mean, being trapped somewhere for 30 years is traumatic. But instead, the reality is she helped a certain Kang the Conqueror get power there and get his super suit back. That's it. That's the big reveal is she helped Kang, and what took me, a few seconds to say? They end up holding off for the majority of the movie, even though they initially hint at it in a quick flashback scene at the very beginning. But unfortunately, we have to wait until probably over the halfway mark for this to actually be revealed and brought to light. which is ridiculous, and to be quite frank, I hate it. The first two-thirds of the movie to me are honestly just boring and sort of a time waster until we get to that reveal. We see a unique world in the quantum realm, which looks ripped from a Star Wars universe, and I did enjoy the creativity and varied styles of beings there. There was one who looked like they were made of obsidian with golden lines going through them. One that seemed to be made of swirling paper, which I thought was really cool, and one that even seemed to look like a human version of Bill Murray. Weird, right? So far in this movie, we have a scene where Janet confronts someone who seems like an adversary, only to be friends. And now with Bill Murray, we have someone who's an old friend who is obviously a bad guy. Yet somehow she is shocked when he reveals he is bad. What a twist. The trio of Hank, Janet, and Hope manage to escape Bill Murray by turning his dinner into a larger version of itself. Because in Soviet quantum realm, your dinner eats you. They steal his ship, and Hank Pym fists the ship until it goes fast enough to get away. Like stuffing a turkey, they said. I can't make that up, nor would I want to. It is ingrained in my mind forever now. Meanwhile, Scott and Cassie are prisoners of a band of resistance fighters. During this entire scene, it didn't make much sense to me. Because somehow during it, you see that Cassie is separated from her father, who didn't go giant man and fight back for her. And we see him being drugged into this ceremony type thing where everyone is chanting. These people are exiting this house and bringing out this chalice of sorts. And Cassie's just in the chanting crowd telling her dad, hey, drink the ooze. So either they did this entire ceremony with Cassie just moments before, and then set everything back up and went back into the house for Scott to then do it, or it just doesn't make much sense. Why not just do it all at once? I don't really get it. And it just was stupid. I hate to say it, but it's like, if you're going to have something, have it make sense. The entire reason he was supposed to drink the ooze was so he could understand their words and their language, which I do appreciate them having some reason why they can communicate. But it's just, okay, that was a scene. That's what that scene was. Anyway, so Cassie goes from being into the crowd to running to her dad's side because even though she's been let go, her dad's still being held prisoner until a telepath arrives. The telepath reads their mind and says, okay, they're not spies. But even then, the telepath doesn't really make sense. Because it's more of a nitpick, but he asks them, who is San Francisco and what is Earth? If he's a telepath, can't he just know that? Or does he only get a TikTok version of their mind? Like, oh, this is a 5-second clip and that's all the explanation I get. It's just a nitpick, but you're either a telepath or you're not, and this guy seems somewhere in between. Well, apparently the Conqueror, which they say rather a lot rather than Kang, because it sort of seems like they're building up to a reveal of Kang, even though he's on all the posters, and everyone knows it's Kang, and they know he's a big bad of the new cinematic universe. But anyway, they just call him the Conqueror, and they find out that he is going to be looking for Scott and Cassie because of Janet. See, the full story of Kang and Janet is that when she was trapped, Kang crash landed there. He had a power core that could get them out of the quantum realm together, and so they managed to work and get it working again. However, the ship is psychically linked to Kang for some reason, so when Janet actually ends up touching it, she gets a quick burst of his memories of him destroying worlds and timelines, and all of a sudden she realizes, oh hey, I've been helping a monster. Shit. So here's where I'm going to pause and say, I have no idea what's going on. At first, I sort of got it. This quantum realm is apparently outside of space and time. So I thought, okay, that's why the Kang from the Loki TV series didn't bother messing with this other Kang, because it's not a part of time. See, the Loki Kang pruned timelines down to one, and now we've got the multiverse. And I'm just sort of confused how that works with the Kangs, because this Kang was sent here 30 years ago when Janet was there, but the timelines were still being pruned then, only for it not to be pruned now. And yeah, I've got a headache already trying to think about it. So to steal a quote, time is wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, and we will pretend that this all makes sense. Back to the story. Janet uses her tech to enlarge his core, making it super dangerous and not even he can get close to it. Problem is, he had the core long enough to get his super suit, which basically makes him invincible, unless he is fighting ants. Seriously, this guy says he killed countless versions of the Avengers and Thor, but based upon what I saw, I have absolutely no idea how. Either way, he's mad and wants the shrinking tech to get his machine back and leave the quantum realm. So he sends his killing machine, part man, part machine, all murder, and it is absolutely goofy. I don't honestly know if there's a way to make MODOK look not goofy in live action, but it's bad. It's just really bad. Like, he looked passable when he had his face cover on, but he keeps removing it to reveal his face, which, now that I think about it, is something that all these characters do way too much. Hostile world, people shooting at you, remove the thing that protects your face so you can have your CoverGirl moment. All of them do it repeatedly, and it's honestly kind of distracting. Why do you do that? What's the point of a helmet if you never have it on? Anyway, MODOK is actually Darren from the first Ant-Man, which, I'll be honest, I thought was kind of cool and was hoping they would do more with it. Like, this guy was sent to the quantum realm, body all messed up by it, then was taken and operated on by Kang, and yet he's pretty much just a consistent joke the entire way through. Still, MODOK comes and he manages to capture Scott and Cassie. One cool thing, aside from Cassie having her own suit and shrinking and fighting, is seeing the homes in this realm are alive. I have no idea how it works, but home defense takes on a whole new meaning when your home can fly away and also has laser cannon arms. I wouldn't mind living in these homes, they are really cool. While most of the resistance flies away, MODOK brings Ant-Man, and I guess we'll call her Larva, to Kang. Kang makes a simple request. Go get his core, shrink it down, and he'll let them live. After a brief flexing of his power, Scott agrees so that his daughter will be safe. So Scott goes and dives into the core of this device, which while there he encounters a probability field that makes just sort of infinite versions of himself based on all the options he could have. One scene that I actually really did like and was really nice was of all of them fighting and being in utter chaos until they hear Cassie's voice calling out to them. All of a sudden, all the Ant-Men and one Scott who just works at Baskin-Robbins all work together as suddenly they share the same goal, save their daughter. It was actually a really sweet scene to me that was kind of ruined by all the effort going into it just for Scott to toss his shrink disc into it and it failed miserably. It was cool seeing all the Ant-Men work like actual ants, building up a little pillar like ants do in the wild, but then to have it just fail and mean nothing, it was a letdown. Because as all the Ant-Men fall down, Wasp joins him in the core, surrounded by her own myriad of Wasp versions. However, once they connect, all the alternate versions disappear. It's not really explained why, they just do. However, by the combined might of several shrink discs, they manage to shrink the device back to a more manageable state. Kang collects it, but in a shocking reveal that shocks absolutely no one, he betrays them. He keeps Cassie for himself for some reason. Janet and Hank arrive, and he downs Hank's plane with one of his little energy blasts and kidnaps Janet, leaving now Hank, Hope, and Scott trapped somewhere else within the quantum realm. So Hope and Scott have lost all hope until Hank arrives, surrounded by giant ants. He informs them that the ants in his lab that had been given enhanced intelligence were also transported to the quantum realm, but had somehow got caught and lived through 1,000 years in an instant, sort of evolving greater intelligence and forming their own civilization, as well as advanced ant tech. The entire time, Hank had been getting signals from them, while in the quantum realm, only he didn't know what it was until they finally found him. With the ants' help, they get the ship fixed back up, and the trio head to save Janet and Cassie. Only by this point, Cassie has already saved herself. She's broken free and managed to get the captured rebels free. She then hijacks Kang's victory broadcast to tell everyone it is time to rise up. What is it they always said in the Star Wars movies? We've got to have a rebellion, rise up, resist. Basically that. The final 10 minutes or so are actually really awesome, and part of the only section I really actually enjoyed in this. You see Scott go giant mode and starts attacking the city like a superhero version of a kaiju, demanding to know where his daughter is. You then see rebels fly in to assist as well, and it's just a fun fight set piece. Cassie is running to her dad when MODOK attacks her, and she manages to go giant form as well, punch him in his overly large face, and takes him out fairly easily. So much for a killing machine. As he's crumpled on the floor, he cries out to her, wanting to know who he should be now. And her only real reply is, not a dick, before going off to find her dad. They have a sweet giant hug moment before Scott and Hope team up to destroy Kang's TARDIS warp gate thing he has going on, which is another thing I don't get. Kang is supposedly the be-all end-all, at least in his own mind. Yet he sends his literal faceless goons to stop Scott, and they all fail miserably. Because of this, Scott then manages to break down the warp gate and ruin Kang's plan. Maybe Kang should have, taken care of Scott first and then try to warp away? Oh well. Finally, we get our boss fight, and Kang is underwhelming to say the least. He has a blast that seems to erase people, and he has a pretty good jazz hand routine to take them out, but it's only one at a time. Why no giant laser wiping out dozens with each swipe of his hand? Also, that disintegrate tech apparently doesn't work on the main characters, as he mainly uses a pulse blast to send them flying backwards. As soon as the tides begin to turn and Kang and his army start winning, the giant mecha ants enter the chat. Hank, who aside from Cassie is absolutely my favorite character in this movie, strolls up like an absolute boss as an ant army just murders everyone, including Kang. Yeah, Mr. I can take on multiple versions of the Avengers gets overwhelmed by ants, and his shield, which is the only thing protecting him, gets taken out by MODOK, with the fateful line, I am not a dick. Kang gets defeated, MODOK dies to a rather cheerful and jokey response, and Janet finally tells him it's time to go home. She can use the power to make a portal, but they have to hurry. Hurry being the key word. I swear to God, I am so tired of people having to race through or up something, being told time is of the essence, only for them to take their dear sweet time doing the thing. One by one, they go instead of hurrying through it together, which means Scott gets left behind as he sees Kang coming back and starts a fight with him. I guess either Kang managed to kill all the ants that swarmed him, or they decided not to eat him alive. I don't know, but now we have a fist fight between two guys who clearly are not trained in fighting. Scott pulls the same trick Janet did 30 years ago, only now he mixes the two of shrink and enlarge, and with the help of Hope, who flies through the portal, they get Kang caught up in some sort of black hole explosion. Which honestly did look neat, but the entire time they are standing there watching him die, I'm screaming for them to run to the portal, which is still open behind them. But no, they don't. At the end, the portal closes, and they look over this new world they are trapped in, just for a new portal to open up a second later as Cassie uses her machine to do the thing she stated at the very beginning, find her dad. Finally, we are done. The world is sort of saved, but also sort of doomed, as the end credits show us a trio of kings calling forth all the kings to do something, and I laughed hard at this scene. Just seeing a coliseum filled with kings who are all yelling and screaming like they're seeing their favorite pop star for the first time is just hilarious. If this was meant to be threatening, it wasn't. It just really wasn't. The final end credit scene is a setup for Loki Season 2, as we see him and Owen Wilson's character from the TVA watching one of the Kang variants. Where will this go next? I honestly have no idea. The simple days of the MCU are over, and I'm not certain if that is a good thing yet, and only time will tell. Sorry for a long one, folks. This movie was somehow both a lot to process and somehow not enough at all at the same time. If you'd like to dive into the MCU, please like and subscribe. That would really help my little channel to grow. But either way, I'll see you next time, Flanny friends. Bye!